Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasam. So homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And gratitude for all of you and for your practice and for the practice. Yeah. So gratitude is not a big deal. Yeah. It's kind of like, if you get it, you get it, right? So this is the thing. If you're checking in with yourself and you're thinking, oh, that person has done so much for me, and it's like, yeah, that person has done so much for me, then you're good. Yeah. You don't have to like, I need to be more grateful. I need to be more grateful for more things. There's like, no. This is like metta. It's like an on-off thing. Yeah. If there's resistance, then you want to stay with it for a minute and focus on the things that that person has given you or done for you or provided for you in a way that helps you shore up your confidence that, yes, that was kind. Yes, that was generous. Yes, that was nice. Yeah. Yes, or at least, yes, that was beneficial. I got something out of that. Yeah. And you get in touch with that and it stabilizes you and it kind of fights back those demons of, yeah, but most of the time they're such a jerk. You actually fight back those thoughts. Yeah. Because it's an on-off thing. If those, what do they call those now? Oppressive thoughts? There's like a
Intrusive thoughts.
oh, I wish I had my microphone on because I can't hear you, Ryan. Intrusive thoughts. Yeah, letting the intrusive thoughts win. I've heard that. The young people say that these days. Isn't that funny? We made it popular. Yeah. They just picked up what we were meditating on. But that's what it is. It's like the intrusive thoughts. We don't want them to win. Yeah, but like when the mind is kind of settled and you're focusing on that something that somebody has given you or provided for you, and it works, it makes sense. You're good. That's the whole thing, yeah. And so the thing about gratitude practice is it's not meant to be like building up a mountain of gratitude so that like it always seems like you've got a spotlight above you shining down from the heavens and you're like, I love so and so and I love so and so. It's actually more like you should be able to at a moment be able to think of what somebody has done for you. Yeah. That it should be like you see your boss and you're like, oh, they threw that birthday party for me that one time with the cake, and the intrusive thoughts that are like, yeah, but they ate half the cake, they don't win. You just think they got me a cake. Yeah. And that's enough. You're like, yeah. Or you're thinking about your fifth grade teacher and you're like, wow, they taught me all about trigonometry, and you're like, but I never use it. You're like, no, they taught me that one thing. That was they really stayed with me until I got it. That was so kind of them. Yeah. And this in essence is just recognizing the nature of the mind, so that our mind is not permanently a thing. Like all of these, it feels like we're carrying around all of these oppressive mind states and just deciding which one we want to pull out at any given time. But the reality is we are a presently arising phenomena. And what is in the mind right now is what is in the mind right now. And what is not in the mind right now does not exist. It might be conditioned to arise in the future, but it is not currently present. And that's fantastic. That's what makes the whole thing possible. You can be full of metta. You are not a jerk in that moment. Your heart is full of kindness and goodwill for other people. Yeah. You might be capable of being a jerk in the future, but it's going, the nice thing is it's going to take some work. Yeah. You're going to have to, it's going to be after a series of misfortunes that kind of lead you to that path. Because if you're starting here, this is the conditions are building for you to be kind, generous, and grateful. Yeah. They all kind of work together. One thing I did want to touch on is something that's occurred to me throughout the morning is recognizing. Um, I heard at least one person kind of talk about this, but I also suspect some of us have this experience where when in uh, in common everyday speech, where we hear people talking about gratefulness, it's sort of like Thanksgiving, right? Where we know we're supposed to be grateful. We know we're supposed to have thanks for things, but then everybody sits down around the Thanksgiving table, and where do we go with that, right? Well, I'm so thankful for God for providing the food, and I'm so thankful for the trees for giving apples, and I'm so thankful for the bugs for pollinating the. And I think anybody who's had this experience where it's we have what we feel is gratitude towards a thing or towards an event, towards an inanimate thing, even to recognize that this is it's appreciation and it's nice, but in terms of cultivating gratitude, we recognize it's not very strong. So it's not very strong. One, because it's very safe. Like if you have a potted plant, and the plant is very pretty and it produces these flowers, it's very easy to be grateful. It's growing this flower for you, yeah. Isn't it so sweet? It smells so nice, and it's green. And it's oh so energetic, this plant. It just always brightens my day. I'm having a bad day and I come in the room and the plant is just growing and it just makes me happy. Yeah. Now this is okay. I'm not saying this is not like a bright mind state, but in terms of like strength of mind states, this is not going to keep away the demons. Yeah. And anything, this is like a momentary part in the clouds because it is conditioned. You've got the thing right there, but your relationship to the thing doesn't generate any karma. If you are grateful towards the plant, you don't generate any karma because the plant doesn't care. It's a plant. And if you generate anger towards the plant, again, you're not generating a lot of karma because there's nothing there to receive it. It's an inanimate object, yeah. It's it's an inanimate object that you cut off. You cut it off, it'll die. It's we call it one faculty life, yeah. But in terms of like the productive karma of actions of body, speech, and mind, the plant isn't capable of doing that. Yeah. Now, what gratitude is strong and is powerful, and thereby serves as a powerful antidote for powerful unwholesome states that might creep in, is when we use it towards other people. Yeah. So it we might recognize, we're just sitting there and the sun is streaming in, and we're like, ah, I'm so grateful for the sun, and that's okay. That's totally fine. Yeah. But we will find that if that is our concept of gratitude, then when the cloud comes in, we're grinding of gears like as we're trying to like, oh, I'm so grateful for the cloud. It waters the plants. And we're dealing with conditions, but what we're looking for with our metta practice and with gratitude as it develops is that ability to tap into stability, to tap into reliability. Yeah. What is stable and reliable is the freedom from oppressive mind states. Yeah. And we use gratitude to kind of help us get our foot in the door. Yeah. We want to be able, as if we can think like, oh, this person has done so much for me. If that comes and there's no obstruction getting in the way of that, then yeah, okay. My mind is in a good enough spot. Yeah, the intrusive thoughts are not winning. And that this is a success. We can build on that. If there is resistance, then that's what we want to work with. And we're not going to be able to work with that by immediately turning and saying, you know what, this picture on the wall, that's really pretty. It's not really going to help us in our interpersonal relationships. And I might just be projecting. This might just be me, but I think the real suffering is in the interpersonal relationships. Personally, I think there's a lot more than the suffering we have towards inanimate objects. Because yeah, our computer might do a thing that it logs off, or the Wi-Fi stops working, or the microphone stops working. We might get really frustrated with it, but then it starts working again, and we just, okay, it's working now, and we start going. We don't like really hold a grudge with the computer, right? What would be the point? In that instance, what we're holding a grudge with is ourself, our inability to accept this inanimate object that we're interfacing with and its various states. Ultimately, we are the person in that scenario. And so when we're feeling appreciation, or we're feeling grievances, we're the being. It's our suffering that matters. Yeah. And if we want to, a quick way to kind of absolve this, if we're not able to accept where we are at the moment, if we're not able to say, you know what, I love myself anyway. If they're like, you know what, if it's a struggle, it's like, I'm struggling to keep the precepts, but I love myself anyway. It's like, I'm struggling to maintain sense restraint, but I love myself anyway. If we're like, no, I'm really struggling with this, well, then focus on a moment of altruism from another human being. And it's funny that that helps you put in perspective again. You're like, I do that too. Yeah. I too am capable of being kind to people. And it all just sort of unravels it. Yeah. Now, because of the power of that karma, working through our relationship with another person, that translates. Yeah. The next time we're sort of getting upset at ourselves, and any moment where we kind of step outside ourselves and see what we're doing, we're like, hey, be easy, go easy on Pamutto. He's trying. We become our own advocate, because again, it is the karma interacting with other people that is the strongest. Yeah, because beings are where the suffering is at. So that is to say, our gratitude practice, let's not make it a source of suffering. Yeah, it's not a quantitative thing. And I'm often saying that, the enlightened mind is all about qualities, not quantities. Quantity does not exist in the enlightened mind. And this is just what I see, is more and more it stops being about amounts, stops being about the amount of defilements I have, or the amount of virtues I have, or the amount of time I've been working at it, or the amount of time I have left in this lifetime. All of that becomes just, it all kind of smears together. It's like, who's counting, really? All I really know is just this one moment. And so again, this is what we're focusing on. If in this one moment I feel gratitude, then we have gratitude. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be all encompassing. It doesn't have to be for all people at all times at once. If we have it in this moment, we have it. Yeah. And now we can start to, once we've got it stable, we can see if we can keep it stable as we look at other people and other relationships. As again, the funny thing is, there is no self. I mean, actually. So we might have a relationship with a teacher, right? And we might find at times that we really appreciate what the teacher gives us, and at times we really don't appreciate what the teacher gives us. But then we might notice that sometimes we are the teacher and the student is sometimes appreciating what we give them and sometimes not appreciating what we give them. And lo and behold, when we're working on having gratitude for our teacher for teaching us, we're also generating acceptance for the perspective of us as a teacher and for the student. Again, because there is no self, all of these various energy flows are equal. And we're working on all of them simultaneously. So the reason that metta practice and gratitude practice is often given in a sequential way, dealing with these sort of tiers or hierarchies of individuals based on how close they are to us and how beneficial and kind they are to us, is because gradually with each level, with each tier of these hierarchies, we're absolving big parts of our suffering in regards to certain activities, certain occupations, certain relationships. Yeah. So somebody was talking about, upcoming anniversary. And no, I'm not talking about somebody's 24,000th birthday, the 24,000th day since they were born. that's not the anniversary I'm talking about. So it's a funny thing to count. But actually like a marriage anniversary, yeah, and being with another human being, and anybody who's been in a like a significant other kind of relationship knows that there are a lot of ups and downs, yeah, and that you can totally focus with gratitude and have gratitude for the person, and then they leave the toilet seat up, or they say something, or they come back late, they weren't thinking about you when they bought that one thing, and and there we go again. Yeah, that's the funny thing about why it's so potent, that we spend some time to develop the gratitude, because it helps us counteract, well, probably something that's very close and near and dear to us is a very potent source of suffering. Yeah, the cashier at the supermarket that we see once every 2 weeks is probably not a huge source of suffering in our lives. And a fellow employee at our job, who is always groaning and moaning and not pulling their workload, is generating some problems for us, 8 to 10 hours of a workday. But are they there when we go home? Hopefully not. And if we bring them, so they're generating some suffering in our lives, but probably not as much as somebody we're like really close to. And so when we start with gratitude, we're gonna there's a reason we start with our parents. There's a reason we start with our teachers. There's a reason we start with for monastics, our preceptor is interesting. Yeah, it's the monk who vouches for us and gives us. We need a monk to vouch for us and be our the officiator of the ordination ceremony. And for many of us monastics, this is not somebody we have any real relationship with. They're kind of a figurehead, and yet we're told to think of like, wow, we needed them to get into the robes. And it logically, intellectually, we were like, I don't have they're nobody to me. Yeah, they were just a figurehead. They probably don't even know my name, really. But that's logic. And again, logic is a sort of quantitative thing. It's about numbers and values. And that's why it sucks for this. It's just not very useful in this case. The reality is that one person gave you something that nobody else could give you. It's extremely valuable and opens a gateway to you spending the rest of your life in the robes. So you're an upajjhaya or a Dhamma teacher, even if they only taught you for a brief amount of time, even if they weren't even teaching just you personally, like this wonderful little sit down, and they like read your mind and told you exactly what meditation technique you need to do. Even if they didn't do that for you, even if you were in a room with 10,000 people and they were giving a Dhamma talk, and that Dhamma talk like blew your mind, yeah, still that person had a huge impact on your life. So this is why it's so great if you can turn your gratitude practice towards them for that. Why? Because again, katanyu, knowing what has been done. Yeah? There's an interesting flow of energy there. They did something extraordinarily beneficial for you. And there's a way that can cancel out 1,000 petty sufferings that, your roommate might have caused you. Yeah. You think of how great a benefit this one person was able to have for you. And it'll also help you see, when you do it, the ways that you're having a great benefit on the people that you interact with. It can be, many of us, I think, are hesitant to consider ourselves in the scenario. We're like, well, it'd be really selfish, right? To think of how much I'm helping other people. But gratitude is not personal, right? So if that comes up during your meditation, you're like, wow, it felt really good to be able to give that to that one person. You're empathizing, you're seeing it from the perspective of the receiver, and that helps just as much as if you don't have to turn yourself towards, okay, but what did somebody do for me? No, just think about the giving and thinking about the state of gratitude and the appreciation, and that this is a it's a wonderful, beautiful mind state. I said, I've been trying to think of like more that I could offer, of especially as in a crescendo over the last week, like gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. How are we gonna meditate on this? How are we gonna do it? And it's like the moment I think of it is like, of course, gratitude. Why would you not have gratitude? Of course. Oh, that person's done so much for me. That person's done so much. Oh, this is hopeless, right? Because once you get it in place, it's like things start working out. The only other thing I want to say is you don't have to start this way, but it's a funny thing. I talked about how the Buddha gave for completely pure and beneficial reasons, right? That we know that the Buddha didn't have greed, hatred, and delusion. And this is the basis of our refuge in the Buddha. It's a refuge in that which is free of defilement, free of motive, yeah? The Buddha just saw our suffering and is like, look, I know what that is. This is how you treat it. I'll stay with you. I'll keep teaching you until you got it memorized, but you got to do the work. But this is the work that you need to do. This is how you fix that suffering thing. And what better teacher than just somebody who's like, yeah, I'm gonna, I'll totally open. I'm totally gonna help you out. Um, but once you get it, it's yours, and you can teach it to whoever you want. In fact, please teach it to whoever you want. It's the best kind of teacher, yeah? No strings attached. Most of our teachers, yes, sometimes they were just recognizing, oh, you don't know this? Here, yeah, let me help you. I'm so glad that you're interested in this. And sometimes they were just droning on and on in the lecture hall about, because you have to learn this in order to graduate. And I'll be damned if I'm going to see you next year. So you are going to graduate. I remember in military school, the teachers would actually stomp when it was something that was going to be on the test. So you would go like 45 minutes where they were just talking about the stuff they were supposed to, and they were like, and such and such. And you knew that, okay, write that down in bold on your notebook. That's going to be on the test because they want you to graduate. They want you to finish this school and move on. Yeah. And sometimes our teachers are teaching us that way. And sometimes they're teaching us stuff that's not even going to benefit us. Sometimes they're teaching us this rare, strange form of algebra because it's what's in the book. And we say, I just don't see how I'm going to use it. And maybe they're honest. Maybe they say, you're right. I've never used that in my life, but you're going to learn it anyway. And maybe they're not honest. Maybe they're like, oh, you'll totally use it. Trust me, if it's on the curriculum, you've got to learn it. Some of our teachers have maybe had like not the best motives. Sometimes our parents are teaching us folk wisdom because that's what their parents told them. And why not pass along a bad idea, right? But there's an amazing thing when we start cultivating gratitude. We recognize that one thing, just like the Buddha. The Buddha could have just kept things for himself, right? He had no reason necessarily to give, except that his mind it was impossible for him to not have compassion when exposed to the suffering of another being. And that is the enlightened mind. It's like its response to suffering is compassion. It doesn't have an option. Yeah. Yeah, that's because again, it's qualitative. The option to just shun them and turn your back on them is not there anymore. It's been abandoned. So compassion was there. But if he didn't turn his mind to us, he never would have considered our suffering, and the compassion never would have arose, right? So it's kind of the essence of everybody has this option. Well, you could keep things for themselves, but they didn't. Previous generations could have, it's, people as they're getting older, they could gather all of their possessions and say, you know what, I earned this. And what the next generation needs is to earn things for themselves. So they gather all their possessions in a pile and set them on fire. And they're like, this is for your own good. Like, I'm not going to give you anything. You're going to make your own way in the world. They could have. That actually was an option, but they didn't. They wrote people into their will, and they gave things away, and they had children, and they sacrificed. Yeah. And so to some degree, we recognize that anybody doing anything for us, kind of irrespective of their intention, is wholesome to that degree. They didn't have to give us the thing, even if they gave us the thing because they wanted something in return. The bank gives us a loan, not out of the kindness of their hearts, because they want it paid back with interest, right? But when you really need the money now, when you really need the loan, aren't you so grateful that the bank was willing to give you the loan, even though it had strings attached? And this is the kind of direction that our gratitude can grow into. And this is where wisdom is accompanying the mind state. It's not just, I'm grateful for that person because they did the nice thing for me, but just like, I'm grateful for that person, the good and the bad. And this is the direction it goes. It's like some of the things they do for me are good. Some of the things they do for me are not so good. But whether or not that allows me to grow is really up to me. It's really up to how I work with it, how I consider things. And when we start cultivating gratitude, it's a funny thing. We'll start to see that we start having gratitude for that person who has actually always been kind of annoying. Yeah. We start having gratitude for that person who's not always letting us get our way. Say, I had one teacher who was he was laying down the law in a monastery, and he was like, okay, we're going to do things this way. And one of the juniors, in a scene that would never happen in an Asian monastery, one of the young guys like, no, that's a really bad idea. I don't think we should do that. And everybody was like, and my teacher, who had 40 years of practice under his belt, was like, oh wow, you're right. Yeah. Okay. No, we won't do it that way. I'll get back to you. We'll do something else. And afterwards, I was like with that teacher, and was like, man, that guy that was so disrespectful. And the teacher was like, wasn't it great? He really took the mickey out of me. Oh, and it's like, wow, he really enjoyed not getting his way, because he was recognizing that sometimes him getting his way isn't the best thing in a scenario. And sometimes it's actually really good when somebody gives a bit of resistance, yeah, and kind of makes you work for it. And if that doesn't, like, oh, maybe that's what Dad was getting at when he was like, well, you're going to earn this. Like, you'll get your allowance, but only when you've done these 10 hours of chores. It's like, maybe it actually was good for me. And this is a funny thing. When gratitude is becoming like really full and really balanced, then there is no good and bad anymore. We see that the things that cause difficulty for us actually helped move us along on the path. Because if things were all sunny and perfect, we never would have pursued Dhamma practice. I mean, there's none of you here is like a millionaire. None of you here has everything going right for them. It's like you wouldn't be tuning into this program if that were the case. It's because you recognize that samsara is not going to be where the happiness comes from, that you're actually willing to look for where the happiness comes from. And that's the gratitude we start to have for even the things that are difficult. And as I said, it's not as though we're having gratitude for the suffering. Yeah. Or having gratitude for the people involved. Because every person, even the people who caused difficulty for us, they had a reason for doing things the way that they did it. And not all of that was wrong. Not all of it was deluded. You know, from their perspective, they might have thought they had a point. And so to that degree, they were at least trying to lead you the right way. It's just from the right way from their perspective. And if you can't have appreciation for that, then, you know, why should we be so choosy? Only have appreciation when people are trying to lead us the right way from our perspective. Well, that would be a conditioned appreciation, a conditioned gratitude, a conditioned happiness. That would not be the stability that we're looking for. The stability we really want is a gratitude that's unconditioned. It just appreciates that the person is giving because they don't have to give. Yeah, they're giving in a way, whether it's giving support or giving resistance, is acknowledging that we exist. And isn't that nice? Isn't it funny? That's subtle nice. It's not always a profound, warm, fuzzy feeling, but it's, yeah, they're sharing this universe with us. Even when they're not helping us get things exactly the way that we want them. And that's actually kind of what sharing is really all about deep down. So this afternoon, yeah, there's nowhere else to kind of go with the technique. If you're feeling gratitude, feel it. Feel the metta. And then point it, remember, kind of lead it back to people. Yeah. And anytime you're just, the feeling of gratitude is just so seated in you that you are just kind of like, oh, sun, trees, carpet, oh, carpet, so grateful for the carpet. And just direct it inward, you know, be grateful for where you have gotten to in this moment. Yeah, because that wholesome mind state is the product of the work that you've done. And be grateful that you gave yourself, the past you gave your present you the gift of developing this teaching, of developing this practice so that you, present you, can experience a mind full of gratitude. That's really a beautiful, blessed state. And that's, what more could you ask for, right? All right, so let's get to it.